Reboots are a fickle thing among people. The practice of restarting or reviving a series or film has been met with a lot of criticism and praise. We live in a world where any type of film, video game, or hell, even web series can or has been rebooted with a fresh coat of paint and new life breathed into it. However, in an age where most people attach themselves to media of some sort, especially with platforms such as Twitter where opinions go to die old yeller style, reboots seem to only be received with nothing but animosity. The audience that view them only seem to hate because they're not a clone of the original series they were based off of. But it's here where we're also met with a crossroads in this topic. Where some people prefer these word-for-word versions of these shows, others tend to exclaim that the world is in need of more original ideas. Albeit these people don't seem to be around when these original ideas do appear. Take The Legend of Korra for example. It was hounded for being one of the worst series to premiere in the 2010s. People tore into it with such anger, and for the longest time it only had this reputation amongst Avatar fans of being way below the standards of its predecessor. What do you know, years later it's now considered to be a heavily flawed but enjoyable series. It's kind of a cycle that most reboots seem to fall into. They get shown and hounded on social media, big media channels cover its first few episodes and create a bigger subsection of people that hate it, the show's hate fizzles out and gets revisited years later. We as an online culture seem to continually keep this cycle going, no matter the show, no matter the team behind it, and definitely no matter the intent. And yes, I mean we. You think when the Velma stuff was going on, people weren't rushing to make their videos, constantly dunking on it? Or God forbid somebody doesn't make a video on the Primos without repeating the same points. Point is that I prefer to cover something more in depth or realistically that's completed in some form. It's kind of been a rule on my channel for the longest time, but in this new year I've been wanting to try my hand at reviewing something current. So, let's talk about Clone High. I think it's safe to say that Phil Lord and Chris Miller's basic cable cartoon has received its fair share of love in the last few years. It wasn't just an excellent parody of early 2000s teen dramas, there were hints of parody for all sorts of stuff. Broadway rock operas, Christmas specials, even classic Looney Tunes. All stuffed to the core with tons of mainstay jokes and personality thanks to a lot of the show's well done writing. The extremized versions of these clones help rip the wool from the viewer's eyes and show that these historical figures were not as perfect as people thought. It's an aspect of the show that I don't even think the writers intended. It has a lot of quirks that add to its identity, like that flat geometric style is something I wish would come back since it gave the show a sort of uniqueness when slated among other adult cartoons at the time. Along with that, the narrator was something that kinda acted as a mini treat throughout the episodes, with each and every one of his opening and closing moments making me smile the whole time. And the soundtracks just drenched in the early 2000s. Alkaline Trio, Dashboard Confessional, American Football, Green Day, and the
Abandoned Pools! Hit it!
You got it, Prom King.
It wasn't perfect, of course. I don't think any show, no matter how good it is ever gonna be perfect. The overall structure of the show, even if it made an attempt to make every episode stand out from one another, kind of followed a simple format looking back. With each episode, there would be 3 total subplots woven in together. You'd have the A plot with Abe, Joan, Cleo, and JFK, which offered a lot of the teen drama aspect of the show, then the Scudworth and Mr. B plot, pun not intended, and if we were lucky, Gandhi and his hijinks would be sprinkled together throughout the episode. It also doesn't help that no matter how much personality the supporting cast have, in the span of 13 episodes, and with these 3 subplots kind of all hogging the show's running time, we don't really get to know any of the other clones around the high school. Like, show of hands, who here remembers that Marie Curie was in the last episode as Gandhi's date? Sadly, as a lot of us know, the season only lasted 13 episodes, in part due to its low ratings being under the MTV banner and complaints from followers of Gandhi for the show's portrayal of the character. So we got left off with a big cliffhanger that left the series in limbo.
But Joan, I love...
That is, until this year.
Say what?
Yep, back in 2020, a revival of the series was announced out of nowhere. Fans rejoiced, memes swarmed front pages of every social media imaginable, and overall people were hyped to see what the new season had to offer. Fast forward to 2023, with the new season out with 10 brand new episodes, does it bring back that same charm from 2003, or should the show have stayed on ice? Well, join me as I go over every new episode the season has to offer.
You know, normally I'd check in with my bro Gandhi at times like this. I think he's been avoiding me.
Let's Try This Again has a lot of pressure on it for being the first episode of the new season, being both a reintroduction of these characters to any old and returning fans of the show, and as the starting off point for the rest of the series to follow after 20 years. And as a first episode, I feel like it accomplishes what it sets out to do in some areas, but creates some new problem ones in the process. The episode sets the prime focus for the rest of the series, unfreezing the clones to continue with Operation Spread Eagle. After a brief recap of the last season finale, we waste no time getting introduced to one Miss Candide Sampson, one of the series' many new characters and antagonists. Being honest, her inclusion in the series is very appreciated. Her design, mannerisms, and everything else about her are meant to be the polar opposite to one Cinnamon J. Scudward, and their yin and yang dynamic does offer a lot of good laughs throughout the season. One of the major noticeable things about the episode, as well as the rest of the season, is the animation and art style. We're a long ways away from 2003 and the original show's cel-animated look and feel, so instead the show's opted out for a more cost and time-effective rigged style. And while it does take a minute to get used to, it's not distracting. The show's original designs do translate well to the new style pretty well, which leads to more experimental posing and facial expressions. While some of that UPA-inspired charm is gone, I don't think it's totally devoid of it. There's an attempt to replicate it with grain and cel shadows to go off that feel. When talking about the new style, I couldn't leave off this segment without mentioning the new intro. The old one has plenty of charm with its science textbook motif in every episode, but the new one has a fresher coat of paint and is more dynamic. The visuals are on point, and the new band they brought in to sing the 2.0 version of the theme song crushes it, giving us an intro that both builds off the original while trying and succeeding to do its own thing. Introductions to new clones like Frida Kahlo, Confucius, and Harriet Tubman do make it feel like the show's not just one big circle of the same 5 characters in their arc now. They offer a breath of fresh air when forced to interact with our crew of originals, kind of signaling how the world has changed and new ideals in a place like high school can take shape in 20 years. And the further we go into episodes, the more we get to see the charm and personality, as well as the problems that come with them. Eagle-eyed fans of the series will notice these characters in the original series and point them out. But 1, for the most part, those designs are incredibly unappealing, and 2, if they were in the show, they would be in a deleted scene, like with the original Harriet Tubmans.
Psst! Tubman! The answer's D! Croquet!
Hey yo, Topher Bus is pretty bass, not gonna lie!
Oh yeah, he exists. Anyways, there are some downsides to the episode though. For one, it's the start of punching down for Abe as a character. A large majority of the season and the episode is spent constantly putting down Abe and magnifying the fact that Joan and JFK are together. The entire season's full of moments like this. Like, I know that Joan wasn't treated the best by Abe, and there were a few jokes made to her about this, but to my knowledge they were few and far between. But here it feels like it bludgeons you over the head with it. Also, I might be wrong, but did they make him dumber this season? And while I do enjoy the company of the new clones, they don't really get a chance to shine this episode. I know it's probably to give spotlight to our main characters, but even if it was the case, Cleo's kind of been relegated to a background character for most of the runtime. The rest of the clones are kept as background characters too. They might have not talked as much in the first season, but the moments when they did interact with the main cast are still vivid in my mind, and I kind of miss that. A problem that I hope gets a lot more attention in the next season. With so much to juggle in one episode, Let's Try This Again does show a crop of new problems for the rest of the season to hopefully fix. I kind of don't blame the crew behind the series for being a bit rusty after 20 years, seeing as how the new team behind the season is a mix of both the old and new guard. Overall, it's a decent start that probably could have been a lot better. Also, this happens in the episode, and I'm not sure what to say about it.
Candide was trying to kill me. Candide was trying to kill me.
I mean, most TV writers' rooms back then only had one woman.
This episode does a lot better than the first for a few reasons. For one, it puts focus on how well the cast can bounce off each other by separating and pairing clones together. Frida, Joan and Harriet, Abe and Topher, Confucius and JFK, and of course, Candide, Scudworth and Mr. B. The main highlight are the characters and not the ongoing narrative. It might just be me, but it feels like when the writing team behind this doesn't have to write for the whole cast at once, it actually gives good results. Like, I enjoy the different perspectives centered around one premise here. It makes for some really good dialogue. Although, and this is a really minor note, but this is also the beginning of the forced fourth wall jokes that the new season tends to dip its toes into. Like, they're saying, look, we know about these issues, please laugh. Like, I'm sure someone enjoyed these jokes, but they're not for me. And they're everywhere this season. The parody aspect makes a return as we get our first written song for the season. The sleepover song is a really good addition for the episode, and shows how much creativity goes into episodes like this, on par with the makeover song from season 1 in terms of memorability.
Makeover, 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 makeover. It's a sleepover, baby. It'll be a blast.
Episodes like this act as pure evidence that the parody aspect of Clone High isn't dead at all, just taken in a different direction. Some of the jokes are hit or miss depending on who watches, but for the most part, episode 2 sticks the landing and does what it sets out to do with its premise.
I'm
Glad we got our anxieties out, so my art can be back to normal again.
Love it!
Continuing on from Sleepovers, another great episode that shows just how good the cast is. The clones are met with their greatest challenge in high school and every ex-graduate's favorite thing, stress. Having the episode have a lot more of a horror comedy aspect to it is really interesting, mixing together the teen drama side of things with a fresh and new genre to create something unique. They really love to play with the colors in this one. When a scene instantly goes from calm to horror, the colors perfectly reflect what the characters are feeling, a touch which is majorly appreciated. Another thing they started to play with more would be the intro. The first time watching, I was caught off guard when the second half of it switched over to a completely different tone and feel with black and white colors. There's something unsettling about the shift that I can't really put into words. And I'm sorry, but an issue that I have with guests on this new season is that they kinda get name dropped whenever they show up, like in this episode. I feel like it's best if they got introduced as random cameos, but here it genuinely feels like something out of the Scooby-Doo show or something. I don't know. What do you think, voice actor and metal enthusiast Nick Jones?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Geek Tunes, because
apart from those though, even if I did enjoy the episode, there isn't really much to say. It's serviceable, of course. The clone struggles are all relatable, and the Scudworth and Mr. B plot gave me a few chuckles, but compared to the first two I covered, and the next few after this one, it's just another episode of Clone High.
Now I have the power.
And now we've reached the episode that signals the mid-episodes of the season, where episodes are more bad than good. But unlike a lot of shows that have a dip in quality, here it's more of a slow shift than a plateau. It's also in this episode where two major problems regarding the writing get brought up. One, Joan herself. They've turned her from an angsty goth with a sensitive side to too nice of a person. And even with Cleo here, like I mentioned before, the writers kind of put her in the back seat for most of the episodes up until this point, only bringing her up for a quick joke. And here, while it does kind of fit that mean girl personality from season 1, it just kind of feels off somehow. I don't really know how to describe it. And problem 2, it's here where I also recognize the issue with Confucius. Now, I love Confucius. He's honestly one of my favorite characters that the show introduced. But when compared to everyone else, they get as much screen time, as much attention as possible. Whereas he's either used as a sidekick to antics, like here or Sleepover, or as a love interest like later on. And I do appreciate that they start utilizing him more in the season, but I do wish he becomes more of a prominent member of the cast in the next season and they don't chuck him by the wayside. Even the whole tone of the episode's off. Like, I know the show has more comedic moments, but when did this become an episode of Kim Possible? As opposed to the show being drenched in the early 2000s, this episode seems to be going more for the stuff that was popular back in the 2010s. And a lot of it is just, no. I'd say that so far this is the episode that'll date the show no matter what as time goes on, and to those who say the original show didn't have any dated references, I'm sorry, but tell me who Mina Suvari was, or Mandy Moore, or Andy Dick. I'm just gonna assume that none of you guys know who those are because I'm a pre-recorded video. In the end, this episode is really close to being my least favorite of season 2. I can really see why people got turned off from the show after this because of the references and the character writing. It sucks because there are some really fantastic jokes deep down, ones that got a really good laugh out of me. But sadly they're few and far between. I'd say that episodes after this improved, but that would be a lie. Kinda.
All performances are banned! That includes the band! Now everyone disband! Why do I keep saying band?
You know, out of every episode of Clone High, a musical was not on the list of what to expect. But there was promise here. I don't know how much detail you can get out of something as basic a premise as Twister the Game the Musical, but I surprisingly had a lot of fun here. These actors aren't just here to put on funny voices, they can actually sing too. Like, I know it's parody, but there's some really good melodies here, and they take full advantage of the parody aspect. This episode really makes me want more musical episodes of shows. Like, the only other ones I can kinda recall is Powerpuff Girls' See Me, Feel Me, Know Me, and the Fairly Odd Parents' Schools Out the Musical. Actually, hold on.
Write that down, write that down!
It's not all great though. Like, the show does that Family Guy thing, you know, where they explain a joke or the stupid thing the characters are about to do. I'm not sure if it's for humor's sake or for a quick laugh, but either way, they always fall flat. One of the few aspects keeping the episode from actually being on par with the other ones I deem decent is a setup for drama between Harriet and JFK. It's a good setup that pushes the teen drama forward, something that's been missing from the show so far, but knowing what they do with it afterwards, it just doesn't make me as excited for the next episode as it should be. Some talking but mostly songs is a good step in the right direction in terms of the parody angle that the show's trying to keep up with. It's a different genre but still does it well. Songs like White Guy Confidence and My Heart Is in a Twister make this episode, and I'm glad that this episode came up because trust me, the next few are gonna keep nosediving in quality.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do? I need to hear you say you gotta believe.
I need to get over our friendship the same way I got over the music of John Mellencamp. I need to accept that there's change in life, grow, and move on.
What does that mean?
I have to let our friendship go.
Okay, so who here thinks this episode was just some writer getting their hate from modern day audiences in an episode? Just me? Okay. Saved by the Knoll is without a doubt the worst episode of this season and this whole series to me. Hell, even including season 1. It's one of the episodes I was dreading to rewatch again for this video. Everything in it is just so mean-spirited. Like, everything here is hidden behind so much winking to the camera, pretty much saying, look, we're making fun of the idiots that cling onto nostalgia. Are we cool now? Nothing works here. The whole premise of Silly Legs is painfully obvious to be digs at the critics of the show, especially with lines like this.
If you hear her saying things like, back in my day, or you're ruining my childhood, it may be too late.
Fuck you. Oh, fuck you, fuck you.
It tries to hide behind this facade of a we gotta save the rec center episode, but it looks to me like whoever wrote this episode wanted to get their fangs in without a shred of good intention. Now obviously no hate to the writer or team, I'm sure they're good people, but this episode is uncomfortable to watch. The constant punching down, the winking to the camera with jokes that make me groan. It magnifies everything I find wrong with this season.
I can't! Back in my day, it was the best movie, and I kept thinking about how Mr. Big Corporation is ruining my childhood.
Joan, you just said back in my day and ruined my childhood.
Oh! The nostalgia is becoming toxic.
Like, there's no reason to go after Abe for his crime of keeping something from his friend that could potentially destroy her. The ending would have been fine if they didn't pull a complete 180 on Abe when JFK and Harriet, the two people that actually committed the act in the episode, pretty much got off scot-free. It's things like this that make me miss Scudworth and Mr. B. At least then I'd have something good to mention about this. But it's so devoid of anything enjoyable. The practice of punching down at audiences is getting so old so quickly because of episodes like this. Next time you want to make fun of something online, at least come up with something more creative. Cause this is just sad.
My love, your lips taste like a fine chalice, full of the sweetest...
wet stuff.
Oh boy, this episode. Look, this isn't as damaging as Saved by the Knoll. This one, while it might be a lot less of a slog to get through, seems like it forgot for a second who these characters were up until this point. Like, I don't mind how most of the characters are written in the new season. I really don't. But Joan's just unforgivable here. I know we've been pushed into this idea that her and JFK aren't as compatible with each other as the show thought, and this being the episode before that really wants to nail down why. Same with Abe. Most of his arc here is trying to figure out that he should apologize to Joan, even though JFK and Harriet are also in the wrong for worse, but the show says they didn't, so shh. To the episode's credit, it's not the absolute worst the show has to offer. Like, some of the jokes I did end up liking, and the whole bit of smart JFK I really enjoyed seeing. Not to mention, Scudworth and Mr. B offer somewhat of a break from some of the bad character writing we get, so it's a sort of taking the good with the bad situation. Another good thing is that this acted as a sort of startup point for a few of the relationships in Clone High, although maybe this was made to not show characters being thrown by the wayside. Either way, their inclusions are welcomed for sure. Spring Broken is an episode that I really don't know where to place in terms of quality. It's better than episode 6, but not by a long shot, so I guess there's that.
Where's your partner, Abe Lincoln?
When everyone made eye contact to pick partners, I was busy looking at the face in the ceiling, Miss Grumbles.
You know, it's at this point that I kinda start running out of things to say about episodes like this. Much like the third episode, there's not much to point out. A main focus of it is to act as confirmation for some of the pairings in the show. Abe and Joan, Confucius and Harriet, Cleo and Frida, and in that regard, it does it well. We wave goodbye to Joan and Kay as this episode tackles their breakup. A move that I'm sure a lot of people got upset by. Yeah. A lot of the jokes here do land. Like, they quickfire joke after joke, and most of the time they got a genuine laugh out of me. For the last two episodes, it's something I miss dearly. It's a comedy, and here it doesn't lose sight of it. The episode even takes a swing at some dark humor, with the whole Mrs. Crumples bit. And God, was it unexpected. Sure, it was out of the show's usual repertoire of jokes, but the fact that it was so unexpected made it 10 times funnier. Like, you never see it coming, it's great.
Also, the statutory rape death by orgasm situation is very troubling.
This episode also has the third and final change for the intro, going for more of a jazz rendition of the show's theme. I know I mentioned this a while back, but it's something that again, I hope the show gets a chance to do more of. When they get to be really creative, it can make for some great stuff. There's also Topher cementing himself as what he always is, the guy people love to hate. He's decent.
Because my true crush is Joan.
What?
I can't fight my attraction to a white woman.
Sexy Eds is another mid-era episode. Not completely good or bad, just riding the line of each. But thankfully, the next two episodes are a light at the end of this really long tunnel. This episode right here is not only one of my favorite episodes of the whole season, not only of the whole show, but one of my favorite episodes of 2023 period. And that's saying a lot because I'm comparing it to tons of other great animated works, but it really does deserve the praise. Who would have thought that an episode centering on Mr. B's origin would be some of the best writing and animation this show would put out? You really do feel for the guy with whatever life throws at him, from being told the hard truth to being forced into continually worse situations to life playing with his emotions. Like, the guy gets no breaks, and the fact that the intro is so non-existent and replaced with its own special intro speaks volumes. The trademark animation that we've been accustomed to gets replaced with a few great styles that somehow still fit with the show. From old 1930s inspired cartoons to Ralph Bakshi Fritz the Cat era animation to even an 80s cartoon look, the show adapts really well in this regard, and it's something I hope they play with more in the future. Look, I know this has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the story they're trying to build up, but after what we've had to sit through for the last few episodes, especially as someone who had to see them while they were still coming out, this one felt like a really nice treat, and the last episode of the season, to me at least, makes it all the more worth it.
Oh, I can't wait for college!
College sounds like a place where nothing can go wrong!
Ooh, Kanye music. Bad timing. You weren't far off since Kanye started that weird stuff, if you know what I'm saying.
We don't give a fuck! Jesus! We don't give a fuck!
Okay, so I'm not sure what the general consensus for Clone Alone is for most people, but me personally, I feel like it was a really enjoyable romp. The ideas they try, emphasis on try, to pull off don't always work, but the episode has its moments that make me like it, just like a lot of this season. The Death Maze is a fun thing to center around a finale like this, full of tiny references to episodes past of both the first and second season. The brainwashed clones becoming obstacles in said maze, the return of characters like Scangrade, a weirdly fitting Michael Bolton cameo, and we also get interactions between JFK and Abe that I hope they keep in future seasons. Clone Alone for the most part swings its perception between enjoyable and not enjoyable, but it always finds some way to land on the former, although it's not always well done. Did they have to have Harriet and Confucius break up to only get back together near the end of the episode? Probably not, but it's here. Being honest here, I wouldn't say I'm excited for what happens next, but cautiously optimistic. With no secret board of shadowy figures around, there's no telling how the next season or two will play out. Whether good or bad, my only hope is that they keep up episodes like this. You know, it's really hard to conclude something like this. It's one of those times for a video when my opinions are really mixed. The new season shows a lot of problems, especially with the writing for its original cast. A lot of Abe's moments especially seem like they were really out of malice. And some episodes really needed another rewrite, and it showed. And asking people on Twitter yielded the same thoughts. Some bad, some good, and some neutral. Can it improve? Of course it can. After 20 years, getting back into the swing of things is one of the hardest things for a creative to do. Sometime to get on the same page and make the next season the best it can be could be the thing that the staff behind the show really needs right now. It's a too many chefs situation where some people want the show some way and others want it another. A clash of ideas. But I have hope that it'll get better. After all, the only direction you can really go from here is up. And I'm totally not just saying that because the last video I made really made me regret looking at my comments. No, not at all.
Looks like it's gonna be a great day today to get some fresh air like a stray on a straightaway. Hey you, got a light? Nah, a Bud Light. Early in the morning, face corruption like a mud fight. Looky here, it's just the way the cookie tear. Prepare to get hurt and mangled like Kurt Angle rookie year. The rocket scientist with the pocket wireless. Some even say he might need some psychiatrist. Doom, are you pondering what I'm pondering? Yes, why would the darn thing be wandering? She's just a foundling, barely worth fondling. My posse's on Broadway like mama, I want to sing. Mad plays the bass like the race